Come to order. We're continuing where we left off in August at the vision planning session. And I think the first topic we have is rezoning discussion. Dr. Harrison, do you have anything to say?
Just that I wanted to just turn it over to the board for any discussion that you wanted to have related to the topic of rezoning, and we have staff prepared to answer any questions that you might have related to the prior rezoning plans that were submitted the last time we had this, went through this process.
Also, I think everyone's been given a copy of information. I would like Mr. Wendell Waller to review some of the DOJ information update for us, if he would.
Sure. You do have in front of you a copy of the consent order that was entered by the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia. As you know, Suffolk Public Schools is under a desegregation order. There is still one area of the desegregation order by the court that is still under supervision by the Department of Justice, and that involves student assignment, which also includes student discipline. And the reason that student assignment remains under court supervision is because of the disproportionate number of black students versus white students that were either subject to discipline or because of the student population in the various schools. Some of the schools in Suffolk had a very high black population. Some had a very high white population, and that is one of the reasons why the M2M program is now in place. It's a way to try to shift some of the students that were in the majority schools to the minority schools. In other words, if it was a school that was predominantly black, it was a way to shift some of those students from that predominantly black school into a school where they would be in the minority. Likewise, if a school was predominantly white, it was an effort to shift some of the students from a predominantly white school into a school wherein they would be in the minority. So that is the current status. That desegregation supervision remains in place through the 1920 school year, so it remains in place up until this current school year. And the court will then take another look at it at the beginning of the 2021 school year, at which time the court will make a determination whether or not the division has achieved unitary status, and if it has, then the desegregation order would be lifted.
Thank you for that. Anyone else? Discussion?
Yeah, I have several items that I'd like to discuss. Let me read what I have, and then you all can tell me what you're thinking. The first thing I'd like to discuss is Nasman River High School. If you look at the capital improvement plan, you will see that a new northern high school is not anywhere in the next 10 years. Maybe it would open in the 10th year in 2029. Nasman River is at full capacity, and the last we checked it was 104% of capacity, and it continues to grow with homes being built and people moving in. In doing a little research, I found that there's a number of Sept classrooms that are at Nasman River High School. And the first question I'd like to ask is, do they need to be at Nasman River High School? Is there a contract with Sept that says that those classrooms should be at Nasman River? Or could those classrooms be perhaps moved to Lakeland and Nasman River could have some additional classrooms? The second thing in reference to Nasman River I'd like to take a look at is if you come across the Mills-Godwin Bridge from the Chuckatuck Borough into the Sleepy Hole Borough, there's a number of houses right along 17 there. There's a development on the left-hand side, a rather large development, and coming down as far as perhaps Shoulders Hill Road. My question would be, is it as convenient for those kids to go to Kings Fork High School as it is for them to go to Nasman River High School. And I'd like to take a look at that as another way of eliminating the overcrowding in Nasman River. And of course, the third thing that we could look at is the installation of mobile units on that property. The next thing I'd like to take a look at is to revisit the 2017-18 plan, particularly the citywide elementary plan. The nice thing about the citywide plan was it did away with all mobile units. It established neighborhood boundaries. It distributed the population more efficiently to take advantage of available seats in all buildings. It attempted to create more efficient bus routes, and it attempted to maintain diversity that closely matches the school division overall. The plan was very wisely generated, except for one school, and that was Pioneer Elementary School. And we had a very local group of parents from Pioneer Elementary School, and as I looked at it, if we could look at that plan, perhaps reduce the number of children going to Booker T. Maybe some of them could go to Kilby Shores, which I know is also crowded, and look at taking some children perhaps from Kilby Shores and Pioneer that are closer to Booker T, and let them go to Booker T, not changing the boundary zones as drastically as was done. I think that otherwise that plan was pretty well received, and it accomplished the goals that had been set. The next thing I think we're going to need to do is we're going to have to redo the zone between Colonel Fred Cherry and John Yates Middle School. And, we're going to need to look at the plan then for moving students from Kings Fork to Lakeland High School so that we could open up some space at Kings Fork High School to move some of those Nasman River children along the 17 corridor to Kings Fork. If you go across the Mills-Godwin Bridge, the students in Chuckatuck Borough go to Kings Fork High School right on the other side of the bridge. If you come across the Mills-Godwin Bridge, those children go to Nasman River High School. So it wouldn't be that much further of a travel distance for some of the students along 17 to go to Kings Fork High School and then redo the boundary between Lakeland and Kings Fork to accommodate some students from Kings Fork to Lakeland. Those are things that I saw that we could possibly look at, and I'd like to hear what other board members are thinking. Again, I reiterate that back in 2018, in March of 2018, we voted without us ever having a discussion on rezoning. Some people had expressed their opinions. Dr. Brooks Buck and I did a town hall meeting. We certainly knew where our people in our two boroughs stood, but the board itself never discussed as a group in a work session rezoning. And I think it's time for us to have a discussion and to take a look at some of the things that I've said and perhaps some suggestions that other people have.
Dr. Harrison, would you like to respond to any of that concerning the Sept classes or whatever?
So I think many of the things that were mentioned are things that we'll probably have to go back and evaluate, and take a look at what our options are. But in terms of the Sept program, I do know that most of the students who are in the Sept program at Nasman River High School are zoned for Nasman River. That is their zone school. So not to say that that's not something that we could look at. I'd have to check with our special education director to see what our options are there, but that's the reason why that program is there, because the majority of the students are zoned for that school.
I'm told that in the CSEP classrooms at Nasman River, they're very small student populations taking full classroom size rooms, which I don't know is the best use of space when you have an overcrowded school.
And certainly it's something that we can take back, staff can take back and can review that for consideration.
Any other comments?
Well, I have a question. With CSEP, does every high school have a CSEP classroom?
And if you have questions specific to, other questions specific to CSEP, I'd be happy to call up our special education director, but no, we do not, if that's the extent of the
No,
questions.
so, okay. I mean, is that the, sorry, is that the one CSEP classroom for the entire district, is what I'm asking?
Actually, do you mind, Ms. Whitley, I'd love for you to come up and respond. So I want to make sure
Yeah, I would
we're
just like to.
providing accurate information. So
Sure.
I'll have Ms.
I'm
Whitley
not
respond to
real
that.
familiar with CSEP, so it
Sure.
would just help with information as well. Hi.
We have classes at Lakeland and at Nasman River
Okay.
right now. And I don't, right off the top of my head, I can't tell you the numbers or,
That's okay.
okay.
So how do students attend CSEP? What are the parameters for that? Is that an alternative school? I'm sorry.
It's a regional day program for students with disabilities who require
Okay. It's not
more than
this-
we can provide in our regular classrooms in the school.
Okay. So if there are students in Kings Fork area that need this support, do they go to either then Lakeland or Nasman River?
Right, I don't know exactly who is where right
Okay.
now, but I do know that predominantly the students at Nasman River are zoned for Nasman River, enough that would make up more than one class. I can't answer whether or not there are some from Kings Fork that are there at Lakeland at this time, though, that are zoned for those schools.
That are zoned for those? Okay. And is this a 9 through 12 program? I'm sorry. Is this 9 through
A high
12?
school class.
9 through 12?
At those schools, it's the high school class, but yes, they provide services K-12.
K-12.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, K-12.
Anyone else? Any other?
Yes, I got a couple of questions regarding to the special, CSEP CSEP classes at Nasman River. Is it possible for us to utilize or shift those? Because we need those spaces. We're dealing with a situation now regarding a teacher in space at Nasman. Is it possible, if there's vacancies at John Yates, for us to utilize that, or Driver is a facility that we have that's sitting there? Is it possible? I mean, what's the limitations or the possibilities of us using drivers? And with all of our schools, really somewhat approaching that threshold, would it be possible, the same way we have a CSEP wing at JFK, would it be possible to utilize Driver in that capacity?
I would hesitate to answer that at this point. I think we really need to go back and evaluate the contract that we currently have with CSEP to see what the parameters are. We do have a contract with them in terms of the services what we agree to provide in terms of facility space. So without having that in front of us, I think it'd be prudent for us to go back and take a look at that. So as we get input from the board regarding CSEP, we will certainly review that and bring back whatever responses we would have for the next board meeting.
I actually serve as chair of the CSEP Board of Directors. It's a board made up of the school systems that are represented in the CSEP program. CSEP is a program that we put together because the children have severe disabilities and have to be served in special ways. We cannot limit the space that they have or just move them to the back of an elementary school when they're not elementary students. That's not the way that's normally done. We cannot remove their space because we need space for other classes. And I think that I have a particular lean or penchant or whatever toward those children because that was my career, special education teacher and program coordinator and principal, actually, of a special day school. The children deserve just as much as anyone else has. If there is a school space available, we try to be as inclusive as possible in Suffolk Public Schools and keeping them in schools. But these children have some serious needs, some critical needs, and they're served that way. I believe that there are 11 different school systems that have joined together to do that because none of the school systems has enough of what it costs to take care of all of the children who are in those programs. In essence, we can't afford to do those independently. So what they did was get together. It's a Southeastern Cooperative Program. And what we did was get together to bond together so that we could share some of the expenses and work together in a program. We do have CSEP classes in several of our schools, not just at Nansemond River. They're spread all over from elementary, middle, and high. Those children need and deserve the same things that other children have. And I would take great exception to taking their class and putting them somewhere else just because we have space somewhere else. If they are Nansemond River students, they have every right to be there at Nansemond River. If we don't have enough students at Kings Fork to make a class, we will probably look at where they live and bus transportation. And if they live closer to the Lakeland zone, we move them to Lakeland. If they live closer to the Nansemond River zone or the Kings Fork zone, they live in Kings Fork, they live closer to Nansemond River, that's where we put them. That's what I have to say, except for this last thing. In our discussion of rezoning, we just agreed to pay $350,000 for a study. I have no idea of why we need to do this now unless we turn around and be prepared for the study at the end of the study and move the children that we just moved. I think it would be prudent of us, since we've done that, to wait for the results of the study and then make determinations about where children should go. And by the way, when we did have the town hall, we had a town hall of our Sleepy Hole in Nansemond Borough, and our parents in those boroughs, Dave and I came away with different things because the parents that were from my borough did not necessarily agree with parents from other boroughs, or at least we left there with different perceptions of what we heard. I recall that vote, and I think it was pretty much that people were not excited about the whole notion of shifting the children around until we knew exactly what we were doing, because we have crowded schools in every borough.
May I please say something too?
Yes.
Madam Chair, as Dr. Brooks Buck said, we do have a joint agreement with the City of Suffolk to hire professional services to conduct a school facilities study, which will include reviewing attendance zones. So our joint meetings, those meetings between the City Council and the school board, have been very beneficial and helped to establish positive relationships between the two governing bodies. I'm most interested in the results of the study, which will probably reveal some important information that we can use to address rezoning, and we are going to be doing this immediately. Rezoning always is a sensitive subject, and it requires much thought, time, and effort. So in my opinion, we need to delay any conversation or discussion on this subject until we have more information and recommendations from the study as to how we need to move forward. And that's just my opinion on this matter.
I had something. Dr. Harrison, how is that feasibility study going at this point? Have you had any update or anything on that? Oh, here
I'd like
comes.
to invite to the podium
Yeah.
Ms. Forsman, and
Maybe she
she
can
can
explain
respond
that
to
to us.
your questions related to the feasibility study.
We've received just this week the conflict of interest statements from the city, as well as the information on the RFP. It is in process, and they are looking to get ready to start grading the people that have responded. And so we're in process now. We don't have a date yet to meet, but we are working on the paperwork so that we can meet.
Ms. Source, I have a question on that. The $300 and odd, is the city paying for that, or are we splitting it? It was my understanding that the city was covering the cost.
Don't know that yet.
We don't know that yet.
That's
Okay.
been left up in the air at this moment.
Okay.
There have been some conversations about where that might come from, but nothing has been decided at this
Nothing.
point.
Okay, great. Then the other thing, I want to go back to Nasman River High School. Knowing the teachers I've heard from there, I think the Nasman River High School issue is separate from rezoning. They have real classroom issues right now. They have multiple teachers moving room to room, and they have very large classes. I don't know what our numbers are. Maybe we're going to get those, but Nasman River has a lot of students, and you're right, we can't, there's a bigger picture. But I think looking for some help this year is important for teacher morale and even for good effective teaching. If you have too many students, I know for science, the recommended number for one teacher to be able to successfully and safely watch over students is 24 students. That's NSTA guidelines, that's the NIH guidelines. It's 24 in a lab situation per teacher. So I am in agreement that I think there's two different things going on here. And I agree, Ms. Mayo, we have this feasibility study, and I'm really excited that it's going to happen relatively soon. So that was great. But when it comes to some schools, and again, depending on the number, I'd really like to, I think the conversation is worth having for these teachers. Is there something we can do to relieve space now? And, if it is mobile, some teachers might, like I know in Chesapeake, Oscar Smith has many mobile units. There might be teachers that say, rather than walking all over, I would rather be in a mobile unit. Now, just getting mobile units is not an instant thing either, right? I know that. But perhaps by second semester, down the road from John Yates, that might work, and we might have teachers, I think this is a discussion worthy that we could put out to them as well at a faculty meeting. Is this something they would like us to consider versus putting all their things on a cart and going room to room? It's just that to me is an item that is worth to address for these teachers' sake. And if there's others in that same situation, I think we should do it when it comes to numbers.
Anyone else? Nope. Dr. Harris.
I will just comment that right now, as of today's student count, Nasman River High School is at 1,584 students, and their facility capacity, just for sake of this conversation, is 1,496.
Is it possible, Ms. Jenkins, did you have something?
Yeah, I just, I've been bringing this up through email, but I agree with what everyone said. Nasman River seriously has a problem, especially with the teachers. I was there on the first day of school to welcome everybody, and I witnessed the teachers going around with their carts, standing on the side, and something needs, I don't know what can happen. I'm trying to figure that out so we can help our teachers, but to have a low morale on the first day of school is not good. So just to see if we can show them that we are trying to resolve this issue and be as quick as possible and not just say, this is what it is and you have to accept it. I don't accept that, because our teachers are who we need for our students, and that's what we're here for. So if we can come up with some type of solution, and I know it has to be one other than deal with it, so whatever we have to do, let's do it.
And I think the whole talk about CSEP is not to minimize them or to put them out. I don't think anyone is suggesting that. It is there comparable facilities? If there's not, fine, but it is something that I think was worth bringing up just because they're occupying a lot of rooms with a small number of students, but with high needs. So I don't think that is, putting that out on the table wasn't meant to minimize their importance at all. So perhaps, go ahead. Mr. Mitnick?
In 1718, Nasman River had 1,548 students at a capacity of 104%. So you just gave us a number of 1,584. So that's going to increase that percentage of capacity even more so. I really do not think we can ignore Nasman River, even with the study coming. Any decisions that we make about rezoning are not going to take place until next year. And I think we need to be prepared, because I don't know about the rest of you, but I can't see that they're going to come up with any plan that is instantly going to help Nasman River. I'm being honest.
Right.
And I really think that we need to be proactive on this.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
is it possible, just to piggyback off of what I heard Board Member Jenkins state and some of the others, could we have a Q&A with the staff at Nasman River to hear their recommendations? Because ultimately, we don't have to deal with it. I mean, Dr. Harrison, your staff could, comply with that request and get that information and bring it back, because something has to be done. Just to reiterate what Board Member Story said, I don't believe anyone is trying to make light of any of our CSEP classes or our special education courses. However, we do have a need, and we have to explore all possible options to solve this situation. Are we going to ever make everybody 100% happy? No. I just want us to move forward and keep this at the forefront of our mind. We do have a vacant school at Driver that would make an exceptional program facility where all of these 11 districts can come together, and you have a gymnasium, and you can really tailor it to be exactly what you need versus being in one classroom. I mean, that's just my recommendation. It's worth exploring. Dr. Harrison, I don't know how others may feel about it, but if that's something we can look at, a possibility of doing, that's not trying to throw them on a back haul or anything, but it's let's do right by them by giving them a top-notch facility. And with 11 districts working together, I think that's something that we could pull off.
May I?
That's fine.
I don't want to interrupt you. Are you
Oh, I'm
finished?
done.
First of all, there are 11 different school divisions with classrooms in all of the school divisions. There's not enough space in Driver or any other place we have. Those programs cost millions of dollars, and that's why, including Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, so on and so forth, to Isle of Wight, belong to or are part of that cooperative effort. There's no way you could take all those children and put them in one school. The interesting thing is that with the laws as they are, we couldn't put them all in one school anyway. That would not be appropriate or permissible. So that sounds like an easy solution, but it really isn't one that we could have here in Suffolk. Our Suffolk students have rights to be where they are. Now, the other thing, and I'm sure it's because of my history here on the board, when I got on this board, John Yates Middle School was 150% over capacity. It was built for 800 kids. It had 1,204 children in it when I got on this board before we built Fred Cherry School. We have schools that are overcrowded all over. That's why we have portables in the back. I dare say, I don't know what teachers want, and that would be up to the staff to determine if there's something that they want. If somebody wants a portable in the back, that would be fine, but it wouldn't be a portable that you could place all the students who have disabilities in the back of the school. It would be seen as discrimination in some situations. If that's the case, if you're just putting them back there altogether because they have disabilities, that's not something you can do. And so I'm not sure, again, where the conversation is going, because if we're talking about next year, then having another conversation, and then turning around and having another conversation. We start somebody, for example, in my area in Northern Shores. and they go kindergarten, third grade, and then the study comes back and says, well, we need to draw a line and they need to go somewhere else for the other school. As a military wife with a daughter who went to 11 different schools because we just moved around, the Army really didn't care where she went to school. It's not the best kind of situation. As a special education teacher, as a social studies teacher, as a music teacher, I've been on the carts rolling around from place to place. My bathroom at Ruffner, you mentioned Ruffner, I taught at the old Ruffner. The bathroom behind the stage was a special education classroom. That area was a special education classroom. Special ed students have been stuck anywhere, placed anywhere. You don't have that many, so you can get in a corner. Well, there are spaces that certain disabilities require, and just because there are 8 of them, there might be 8 of them in a class, let's say for children with emotional disturbance. If they are in a class together and jammed on top of each other, I guarantee you'll get chaos and maybe something more. There are guidelines that we have to follow, and I'm not at all averse to doing whatever we can to help people in whatever schools are overcrowded. But I'm listening to teachers who, I guess just a few months ago, who were concerned about being in portables. Are we now suggesting that we get more portables and move them behind? And again, do we have some portables that are in good condition that we can put behind the school that somebody wants to work in? All of those questions would need to be answered before we saw that as a solution.
Madam Chair.
I have a suggestion. I think I'm seeing that there is a concern among many of us about Nansemond River. I think we need to ask Dr. Harrison and her staff to look at this situation, because that is something that needs to be addressed in some way. And then you can come back maybe with some ideas and so forth, and you might want to add to that.
And I agree with that, and I thank you for that, Madam Chair. I did want to just briefly call up Terry Napier just to add some additional context to the conversation. And I also just wanted to also just respond that I agree that it would not be my recommendation to consider the old driver facility due to legal implications, as well as when we considered it for the Excel Academy, we realized it was actually cost prohibitive to even consider that for a standalone program due to the cost of renovations for the building, as well as cost of administrative staffing. And so we ended up moving in a different direction with that program due to the cost implications. But in this case, we're also looking at significant legal implications with that consideration.
I'm sorry. Could I clarify one thing, Dr. Buck? When I mentioned mobiles, it wasn't for any handicapped students. And I mentioned Oscar Smith. It was just for an English class, psychology classes. It's for regular ed. And I really, really like your idea, Mr. Riddick, that we ask the faculty and talk with them. And I think whenever you might have that meeting, I would like board members invited. I think it's important that they know and hear. I would like to hear from the faculty. I think they need to know that we're very concerned and we agree. As Ms. Jenkins said, she put it very, very well. We are concerned and we want to do something. So I'd like to be part of that discussion, at least to hear it. I don't have to be part of the discussion, but I think a board presence would be very good.
Dr. Harrison, I know you just described the conditions at Driver. Would it be feasible to have a 9th grade center at Driver and put the 9th graders at Driver and have Nansemond River the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders? And those 9th graders could participate in Nansemond River activities. Years ago when I worked in Norfolk and they were redoing Morey High School, and half the kids went to another facility for a year. They did 9th and 10th grade, and then they did 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, were off into another building. Perhaps Driver could be considered for that.
I guess just my response to that would be I would recommend adding that to the facility study as something as something that they could evaluate in terms of the facility itself and what it would cost to ensure that the building is ready for that moving forward. The building's been vacant now at this point a full year, and and again this school year. So there are some significant facilities needs there, but certainly that could be something that we could look into if that's the board's direction. And then I would want to give Mr. Napier a moment, if that's okay.
I just want to say this one thing. When it came along to the lines of moving mobiles at Nasman River, I want to be accurate and portrayed accurately. I didn't want to put special ed in mobile units. That's not my recommendation. It would be more feasible to have those displaced teachers who are already displaced to assume that new acquired area versus uprooting a special ed class who does need the real space, and that would be more practical to keep those students where they are than to relocate them to a mobile unit. So I just wanted that to be clear. In regards to the possibility of using drivers as a magnet school or as a hub, I just ask that before we shut it down so quickly, let's research and explore. Things are changing. In the words of Bob Dylan, the times are changing. And what was not permissible 5 and 10 years, 20 and 30, 50 years ago may now be permissible now. So I think it's worth to look at. And with 11 divisions, it's something that we possibly could do, just like we did with the Prudence Center, where we jointly, where it's not one district allocating all resources. It may be something down the road, but it's just something that we can consider. Sorry. Thank you.
Mr. Napier.
On the subject of driver, let's start there. At this point, driver is not fit for anything other than storage. It's being used for storage. It replaced Mount Zion. I would not recommend that you put any program at driver at all. I don't want my child at driver. Driver is in a state of disrepair. It had problems before we closed it. Those problems have gotten worse. It would take a great deal of time, a great deal of money to get driver to a level that any of you would want any of our students to go there on a daily basis. So I've just put that out there for you before we go too far on conversations about driver. Now, mobile units, that is a very doable thing for us to do. We currently have 7 mobile units at Creekside that are empty that we could move tomorrow. We currently have 3 empty mobile units sitting at driver that were formerly used there that could also be moved tomorrow. The problem with that is we have to find a place to put them. There is a practice football field behind Nansemond River High School that's currently being used for various athletic things. We could take that away from them, and we could probably fit, I want to say, 8 to 10 mobile units in that space. It takes, I think there's about 350 feet there. It takes about 36 feet per mobile unit, so we may be able to fit 10 mobile units behind Nansemond River if that's the direction that we wanted to go. The problem with that is it's not going to be quick. We can get them moved quick, but then we have to get them wired. We have to get data to them. We have to get fire, communications, all these things. But the biggest problem is Dominion Power. It usually takes us 3 to 4 months for Dominion Power to power up a mobile unit once we've moved it. Now, I'm sure some of you have far more clout than I have, and you may be able to make that happen quicker. But generally, when we're talking about mobile units, Dominion is our holdup. We have a guy that moves mobile units for us. He'll start moving them tomorrow if we want to get him on the phone. That's not the issue. And we do have mobile units that are empty. We currently have 17 empties at John Yates. However, those units have been bequeathed, let's say, to our neighbors in Poquoson, and we're happy for them to take them. But we still have 11 mobile units in addition to those that we could move to Nansemond River if you decided to do that. We'd have to go over there. There are city codes that only allow us to put mobile units so close together, so there are parameters that we would have to meet. But I certainly think that there's enough room behind that school on that practice facility for us to get, if not 10, at least 8. And you're talking about, with 10 units, close to 300 students. Teachers don't like mobile units. We don't like mobile units, but we do have them available.
About how much would that cost? I saw a memo from you.
It cost me
about
$4,000 per unit to move it. At that point, I turn it over to Mr. Littlefield. It's approximately, what, $6,000 per unit? Okay, so let's say 10,000 for that. Whatever Dominion Power is going to charge us, who knows? I think for $100,000 or a little over, you could move 10 mobile units and set them up. And October, November, if we started doing it now, we may be able to get them open by second semester. I wouldn't be able to promise you that because, like I said, it's Dominion Power that holds us up on that. But it's doable.
It's doable.
If you wanted to put mobile units there, and we have mobile units available. Now, starting in January, all of the mobile units currently at Yates are going away, and we want them to go away. Frankly, some of them, we would have paid them to take them, and they are taking them at no cost to us. But the 10 that we have left, the 10 or 11 that we have left, we certainly could move to Nansemond River. I don't think we could put more there. There's simply not room. But I think 10 is doable. So you tell me what to do, and at that point, we'll do it.
With that, we'll just kind of defer to the board for, if this is something that you would like for us to pursue as a board, then we would be happy to continue to work on this. Again, Mr. Napier's already done quite a bit of research on this topic as we've been obviously really monitoring this and looking at the numbers and realizing that there's a need for additional, some type of solution for Nansemond River. And so that is a feasible solution. I mean, but it does have cost implications, and as he shared, the timeline is also something that we can look at trying to meet it for a second semester, but there's no guarantee.
Ms. Forsman, may I just ask, do we have $100,000 that we're not using to move 10 mobile units and set them up somewhere that we haven't seen, or maybe? I'm just trying to figure that out. The other thing that I would ask too in our discussions, because we've had discussions of safety as well, is inconvenience inside the building better than concerns about mobile units behind the building or the side or wherever we put them? I don't know where the field is, wherever we put them. That's a question I'd like to ask. But the $100,000,
Obviously that's not budgeted, so it would be, what we would have to do is we would have to anticipate where we might have some money at year end.
Thank you.
What was the second part of the question?
The second part of the question is safety. One of the concerns that we've had is making sure we get our children inside, our students inside the building rather than outside the building. And so if there's a contingency plan, of course, I don't want to know any details, but for those situations, I'm just thinking about a balance here. Are we more concerned about convenience? I'm less concerned about other things that would be involved in putting.
I don't think we'd create a situation there that we don't have in any building that has mobile units.
Right.
So there are plans in place to address and deal with situations that come up at every school that has mobile units.
All right.
So the staff there would just have to implement those same types of plans to make sure that everybody knew what they were supposed to do in the event of any situation that occurred if they were in that mobile unit.
I see.
It's not ideal. Mobile units are never going to be ideal, but they do serve a purpose sometimes.
And I will say some teachers do like to be in mobile units. There are some people.
I'll be honest with you. 100 years ago
them.
when I was a teacher, I was in a mobile unit, and I liked it because I could control my own HVAC. Mrs. Mayo knows all about this. She was at the school I was at.
Right.
But I had one too.
There are teachers.
Now we still let those are the only teachers that get to control their HVAC because teachers in the building don't get to.
That's right.
So there is that advantage.
And we might not need all 10, but I think in terms of a directive, I don't know if I need to make a motion of this, but I would like in terms of collaboration, I would like the faculty to have a conversation about this at Nansemond River, and I would like to hear from them what they feel on this, because I think they're the ones affected, and whether they have other ideas or how they would feel about this, I would like to hear from them. So,
Dr. Harrison, you could, arrange to speak with the faculty or the administration there and see how they're feeling, and how many teachers are being affected, by this situation.
Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Napier, I had a question for Mr. Napier. Would we be able to reduce the weight at Nassau River if we had approximately 6 mobile units moved over to Nassau from the other locations? 6 of the 10? Of the 11?
As far as the time to get them up and running, I don't think it would make any difference how many we move.
I mean, if we had 6 mobile units, what actual weight would we be taking outside of Nassau River as far as student space?
Well, you calculate 25 or 30 students, that's 180 if you.
Okay.
But it has to be figured different in a high school because kids aren't in there all day, so it would give you enough space to have 180 students taking class somewhere other than the classes in the buildings.
Gotcha.
However they rotate them through those classes.
Okay. My next point that I would like to make is there is a total of 37,300. Well, we can just say 37,000 in savings that our division currently already has. Minus 12,000 equating to 25,000. Therefore, at the cost of $4,000 per mobile unit, we could move 6 that we should have the funds from. There is a vacancy that we're not spending right now as far as staff.
But that's just a partial cost.
Right. I know it's a partial cost, but I wanted to address that. And moving forward, that's dealing with one salary from one vacancy. That's not equating the other salary, which is a vacant. So although those funds are already allocated, it's money already there that's budgeted. Would it be any implications that will stop us from moving funds from that area to this area? Because it's money already there.
Yeah, I'm not sure what position you're talking about, but certainly that would be one of the places that I would first go to as soon as our payrolls have posted for September, to look and project that out and see if there were places that I felt like we would have some savings based on vacancies. But I would want to wait until I could get my September numbers so that I would know solid, because we've just had almost 200 new people come on. I want to make sure what those new salaries are before I would tell you. I would definitely be looking at projections of cost of places that I know that we could take it from. But at this moment, I don't know those numbers. We're waiting to get the September payroll, the last September payroll posted, hopefully this week.
Ms. Forsman does an excellent job managing our funding, and she watches every penny. I know she does. We've had conversations about this, and I know if she can find any money anywhere, she'll surely do it. But you have to be very careful. We can't take from one to give to another, so to speak. We have to be very careful. I know that.
Definitely early in the fiscal year, and so
Yes, we are.
we don't know what's ahead of us. But certainly, if this is what the board directs, then this is what we will do, and we will go out and we will project out and we will do.
When I gave that recommendation, I was taking into account the vacancy from our former superintendent that has left. Although we may not have a new person in that spot for some time, I'm not at liberty to discuss, but there's dollars there, and we also have another admin staff that it's some vacancy, and we may not fill that position until some time. Therefore, if there's about I think about a couple months for the superintendent, and probably roughly, if I may be far-fetching, so at the risk of putting it out here now, we may not fill Dr. Bird's position until January or sometime in the new year. So those are funds that's already allocated that is sitting there. And I know you said you're going to look at that, but
I'll look at
I just wanted to be.
Wherever there is extra, I'll be able to project that out and be able to decide with Dr. That's where I'll look there as part of my projecting out. I'll look at several other little places that either I'll look at what we spent last year in all different accounts and compare it to what I know is going to happen this year. There's several ways that I
Okay.
scrub the accounts every month to make sure I project out every single month. As Mrs. Byram said, I'm very careful to watch every dime of our money so that we can begin to plan even.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So, Dr. Harrison, you can get back to us on some of these issues and give us more information, you believe?
Absolutely, and I guess, so, just so I'm clear on the board's directive regarding the mobile units at Nansemond River, are we looking at 6 mobile units, 10 mobile units? What direction would you like for the staff to take regarding mobile units?
The reason I recommended 6 is because that was along the lines of cost savings that we already have versus loading it with all 10 or 11, and we don't know how many mobile units we can have there per the city guidelines.
How about if we go out on Monday and we measure, and then we contact the city? We have to get permits to move these things in there, and we let them tell us how many we can put in there. Then I can let Dr. Harrison know, and she can, it's probably going to be between 8 and 10. I'm guessing, but I think we have enough room for that, but we'll make sure that the city's going to be okay when they come do our inspections. And then you'll know.
May I ask the question? Do we think it's reasonable to first talk to the staff and get back what they say? Because if we move 10 units and at about $10,000 a unit, 6 units at about $10,000 a unit.
That's right.
If we move them there and then we have a different conversation from the staff that may not have contacted their board members, but a different conversation, I think it would be feasible and prudent to talk to them first to see what it is we're looking at before we spend on those things. That's just my opinion. It doesn't have to be anybody else's, but I think that would be a reasonable place to start.
Yeah, and I can go ahead and get the information as to how many we could put in there so that you would have that if at any point you wanted to move forward with that.
Right.
And then you'll know.
We can do this, he can do the research, and we can do the seeking info simultaneously, because we haven't made a decision. So let's just go ahead and do all the research. Let's do the collaborative, let's do the info, get it, and then we can bring it all back together.
Just while Mr. Napier's at the podium, what's the deadline or time frame that you would need a response in terms of, being able to meet a timeline of second semester, for example? Like, how soon would you need to know that this is the direction
It would
we're
have to
moving
be
in?
relatively soon, in the next week to 2, I would think. It'll take us, to move 10 units, it'll probably take us 2 weeks just to get the units moved once they get started. If it rains, they can't move a mobile unit. So it takes a little bit of time to move them, but I think in 2 to 3 weeks we could have the units moved. Then John would have to get his contractor out to run his cables. We'd have to contact Dominion. They'll do their engineering, because I think they'll have to do something with transformers to even get power to mobile units at Nansemond River. But we had to do this at other locations in the past. It's not that they can't. It just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of money.
To make sure everyone had that information, just in terms of planning, if you're thinking that you would like for us to have something like that in place.
To make it happen by January, we're going to have to move on this fairly quickly.
Thank you.
I agree.
Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns?
Can we ask for a report at the October 10th board meeting based on faculty recommendations and Mr. Napier's recommendations?
Happy to provide that.
All right, moving along, we have information on a copier project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to call to the podium Wendy Forsman, our Executive Director of Finance, to share. She actually has 2 presentations. There's a copier project and allocation of school funds. So, Ms. Forsman, if you could go ahead and share.
All right, good evening. We're going to talk a little bit about the copier maintenance project. We've been talking for several months and answering questions about quotas and the project and everything, so we thought it'd be nice to bring it all together for you. I'm not going to read the slides to you because there's quite a few of them in the interest of time, but basically the project began because we had a need, like many projects become a need. There are lots of components to printing, so I want to make sure I talk about those. It's the type of equipment. We had equipment in our buildings that were copiers. We had individual printers in offices and classrooms. The copiers and printers all have maintenance costs to keep them up. There's a charge per copy to do that maintenance project, so that to keep maintenance on, it's a cost per copy. And so copiers have a cost, and printers have a cost, and color pieces have a cost. So there's lots of pieces to that. And then there's the cost of paper. So those are all the components that we were looked at. Here's the history kind of how this all began. In 2000, the year 2000, we had printers in every single classroom. And in that year, they became networked, so they became part of our network. By 2006, we had to outsource our support for our printers, or this printer cost, to keep the maintenance up on them, because it's just too much for the school division to handle at that point. In 2007, the cost of the maintenance contract was put at the school level, so the schools began paying the bills for their cost per copy. In 2008, in response to that, the principal said, hey, we need something to manage this. It's expensive. How can we manage the cost? So in 2010, they began a paper cut pilot. Paper cut is a program that helps you manage copy costs by giving people some sort of quota, how much they can spend on a monthly basis. In 2011, the paper cut project became division-wide, and then principals began requesting quotas. By 2015, these copiers and printers they're old. I mean, they were 15 years old, many of them. And it began to be very difficult to get parts for them, to get toner for them, there was a lot of downtime with the copiers. They were spending a lot of time down at the schools, and so the teachers and staff couldn't copy. And so we really began to try to find ways of how are we going to replace these copiers and printers. So in 2018, our copier project began. So at that time, in 2017, 2018, we identified over 500 printers that could not be serviced anymore. They were just too old. And the replacement cost for those printers was $750,000. We also identified copiers that were more than 10 years old in buildings, and they were frequently down. And that estimated cost in 2017 was $800,000. So you can see how cost prohibitive that was to try to just replace. And when we approached our vendor about it, they told us that there were other divisions that had implemented a program like this successfully. So we were very interested to see what others had done. So when you look at the cost of printing, you can see here where copiers for black and white, it's about 1/2 penny, but for color, it's 7.5 cents. And when you look at printers, the cost is 1.5 pennies, so roughly, what, 3 times that? And then the cost for color is double at that point, so at 0.6 cents. So you can see that it's pretty costly to have a printer versus a copier, and that color is extremely expensive, so you have to be careful how you manage those costs. So when we looked at the cost of printing those pages, we were trying to just get an idea of what it costs per 1,000 pages, because every penny counts in this case. So for every 1,000 pages of black and white in 2017-18, the savings was $10.30 if you used a copier versus a printer. And for every 1,000 pages of color, if you used a copier versus a printer, it was $62. And at that time, we were running about 15 million copies a year, so you can see how that could add up pretty quickly. So we began to develop with the vendor this project, and we began looking at updating copiers and providing them throughout the school based on principal recommendations. We literally walked the school with the principal, discussed where the printers were, what they were being used for. We had the number of copies per month per printer. We had a lot of data with us as we walked the school and looked at the facility. Where were the teacher workrooms? Where would the copiers be used? How far away from students? How far away from teachers? Those kinds of things. We began at that point looking at removing the individual printers from classrooms and offices, and setting up a badge swipe technology, which basically you walk up to the copier and you swipe your badge and you can get the copies that you want, so that we could then have privacy, because there are privacy issues to deal with. And then also your stuff didn't sit on the copier for someone to take it by accident. So it was a nice way to be able to do that print through badge swipe technology. So the advantages for the schools that we began to develop as we began to develop this project were that if a school would go to this project voluntarily, that their maintenance costs for their copiers and printers would come to the downtown office, and we would pay it out of local funds instead of the school paying it out of their allocated funds that are sent to the schools. Then the savings in paper and maintenance costs due to this timeout feature that I'm going to talk about in a minute for unclaimed job would stay at the school, because they wouldn't, when you send something to the copier and you don't print it off, then it gets rid of the job at the end of the evening, and so it doesn't print. So for people that would maybe hit print on accident, or they did it and then they realized they didn't need that, or it was too many pages, they could go in and they could take it off, or if they did not print it, then it would get rid of it by the next morning. Also, it gave us the ability, this project gave us the ability to move these copiers around so we could manage the wear and tear on the units. So if you had one in the office that's getting 1 million copies a year, you could move that to a lesser used area in the building and not have that copier be done in 3 years. So it was a good way to do that as well. So then we had these pilot sites in 2018-19. You can see here we started with two schools, the school administrative offices, and then the 2 new schools were designed to have this project in them. Then we moved on in the spring of 19 to these 5 schools and put the project in those schools. Again, walking the school with the principal, going through all our process. Then this summer, we put it in these schools here. Hope to, in the spring of 2020, put it in these final areas of our school division, and these would finish out the project. So you can see here, I've given you a partial savings in allotment money for the schools. You can see, of course, Nansen River's at the highest. They had 12 months. They had $11,844 that they got to keep at their school level, that they did not have to pay these bills. And this is over the course of the project. So this is last year. So those are 12 months. Some schools, as you can see, are only 3 because the project, we've been doing a little bit at the time. So when we're talking about paper cut, what the cost per copy with paper cut covers is toner for the copier, replacement parts, and the maintenance and repair. So anytime we need a repair, we call the maintenance person. It doesn't cost us a bill at that time because it's part of the entire project. When you're looking at managed print, the administration sets the quotas. They decide how much each employee gets. Sometimes they do job types, sometimes they're doing an individual employee, and that manages their cost because they're still paying for paper. It keeps track of how much it costs to print that project. So when you hit print on your computer, it will tell you, okay, this is how much it's going to cost. Is that okay? And then you hit okay, and it moves on, and it keeps track of all those. We did not require specific quotas for schools. We never discussed with principals that they had to set this quota or that quota. We never told them it had to be this one or that one. We always let them work out their quotas based on what they knew their teachers and staff needed. If you look at this slide, you can see here are the quotas, or were the current quotas. I'm not sure, John, has anybody changed this year? This has been August, so I want to make sure. Okay, so this was current in August, so I want to make sure that we didn't change anything. But you can see how many pages per month the money equals up to, and these are the ones, of course, that are in the project. And if you look at 5 months of data, which I had these schools on for 5 months, you can see who actually reached those quotas, how many teachers reached it. They didn't go over it, they reached it on a monthly basis. Do you have a question?
Should I save my questions for the end, Madam Chair? Or when they come to the slide that I have a question? It's up to you.
Just wait till she finishes.
Absolutely, thank you.
And then we also have student quotas that schools have set. And again, this is a monthly basis. And so you can see how different schools have set their quotas for students. Again, nothing that anyone at the SAO said they had to do. It's just what they've set up to try to manage their cost at the school level. And in addition to all of this, as you all know, we have a print shop. And every school receives a quota of budgeted copies per month from the print shop. So they can send them there, doesn't cost them anything, they can send them there unless they go over their budgeted copies. It's about 25 copies per student per month that can be run from the print shop, and you can see here those that went over, those that are under, and some of our schools are taking advantage of the print shop, some are not taking as much advantage of the print shop as they probably could. Especially at our middle and high school level, they're absolutely using the print shop quite a bit, and we are looking this year when we start looking at the quotas to maybe do some work on the middle and high schools to try to make that a little more so that they're not paying those costs, because they're paying for any of the overages. So we're going to work on that this year. So for paper costs, the schools, as you know, we purchase paper, we go out and we do a bid for paper, and our average cost for a case of paper is $26.50, which includes about 5,000 sheets. In 1819, the schools were billed $80,246 for paper. So we purchase it, we bill them for the paper that we send out to them, and that's about 15.1 million sheets last year. Additionally, the schools themselves purchase paper, colored paper, other types of paper, and when they did that, those costs were $135,000 last year. So in just the months listed here, you can see the timed out jobs came to 199,987 pages that did not print and we did not get charged for because of that timeout feature. So clearly, that's a way to help us have savings. And we'll talk a little bit about the copy replacement advantages. For every dollar of allotment that the school gets to keep, it really only costs the school division about 28 cents because we're paying less per copy because of the copiers. It establishes a sustainable model for us for printing because prior to this we had all these old printers and we could not replace them, and we had old copiers and we couldn't replace them. This way we'll be on a 5-year cycle to replace the copiers and be able to keep them and keep up with them in the technology, and they won't have so much downtime for our teachers. And of course it provides the teachers an up-to-date reliable equipment with scanning and copying that they can use in their building. And the schools get to keep more allotment dollars for instruction. Again, the equipment can be moved around, and then the savings on the paper. Are there any
Questions?
On slide 19, well, it was slide 19 on what I got. It says teachers who reach quota, but I think it seems yours is maybe, teachers who reach quota.
5-month data, is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
5-month data, teachers who
5-month
reach
data.
quota. Well, it was 19 on mine at home, but I think your slides got shifted. Is
Yeah.
it still 19? Okay.
It's still 19.
Okay,
All right, let me go back.
thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I have just a question. I think Kings Fork went online in March. How is their data for January and February? Okay, so that data is going to be skewed from the rest. Right, because they still could be using their own copiers. So that data doesn't really count.
Well, it came in on,
Says the
20th, we began
scientist.
that project there. So I started from the earliest I could to get the
Yeah.
data.
So we don't really know that. So we have 3. So then my other question is, for you to know whether a teacher reached the quota, does it have to hit 0?
Or the report is run in the system.
Right.
And it looks at the teachers who actually hit the 0 mark in their account.
Okay.
So that was the number. And
Right. So here's the concern that teachers brought up to me, and it would be mine as well. If you, let's say, ran a test and you only have 5 copies left, then you go to run your next for 120 students, you're not going to go back to that machine and make sure you hit 0. You're just going to have to go and find a different way to make copies. So this is only tracking if that teacher really works hard to hit exactly 0.
they have started a job, let's say it's 120 pages and they had 20 pages, it will print those 20 pages and the 100. It's going to stop there. It will let them go over. but the next job, they won't be able to print.
So I have not got that report that it allows them to go over, so maybe we could check on that, because,
We let them go over on the one job.
right. So knowing that they're not going to, they won't, and they always want to save 1 or 2, 3 copies for the very end in case that student comes back and needs one. So that does make this data just,
And as Ms. Forsman said, it is the administration's choice on what that quota is set on.
right,
So
but
that's
it's
why you
still,
see them going down.
Sure.
They make that call.
sure, but that does skew that data a little bit, because many teachers might have run out and chose just not to run it or get it to 0. So just saying that. And then the other thing is, again, it's a done deal. I get it. And I wish teachers had been able to collaborate on this. But when a copier goes down, it affects many more teachers than if one teacher's copier in that room went down. No, it was a business decision, but so at Kings Fork, if a copier goes down in the pod, it affects 20-some teachers.
So just talk about Kings Fork.
Right.
That's a good model to look at, because Kings Fork actually has on each floor, in each pod, there's a copier in the front of the pod and one in the back.
Right.
If the copier's down in the front, they don't print to the front copier. It goes to the cloud, and whatever copier they hit their badge on, it releases the jobs on that. It could be the one in the back, could be one downstairs in the office.
Right. So if they happen to hit it when it breaks, and they've let their students, and this is in the middle of class, another consideration is if they need copies in the middle of the class, in the middle of the class period, what do they do?
That's that off to the instructor.
So it's just, I know it's a moot point, but, I know the business decision was great, but if they're in the middle of the class and they need some extra copies, now they're stuck because they'd have to walk to the pod, right? And leave a class alone. And then that becomes an odd decision to make. So, right?
So
Right,
typically teachers will make enough copies for the number of students in their class, and would not, we would never want a teacher to leave their class alone to go and make copies. So certainly that's not something we would ever support.
Exactly.
But just, I think the main thing that, they're conveying with the new system, and this is something even in central office that we experience, is that with the badge, being able to release your printed copies from any printer is actually very convenient. And so I think that's one of the features that's pretty nice about the new system, is that it does increase operational efficiency, and it actually does have a level of convenience that, from the feedback I've heard from people, they tend to appreciate the convenience of being able to go to any machine and retrieve their copies.
And I understand that, and I think business-wise, it makes a lot of sense, but it also has provided some new nuances. So I just wanted the main one was that if they don't hit 0, you're not counting those in. So I think that data, in terms of how many teachers have used their quota, it looks like, there's plenty of teachers who have plenty of copies, but that might not be exactly true.
So
That's all.
The principal can actually run a report if he wanted to see how many got close to that, or their bookkeeper can. So if they wanted to look and see how many got within 10 copies of the 0, or whatever that is, that's a report that the principal can run at any given time, or his bookkeeper can, or their bookkeeper.
They can make changes to their quota at any time. It's not like
Correct.
it's set for the year, it has to be set now. They can at any time call Mr. Littlefield's office and work with them to change their quota.
Per teacher? Can they change it per teacher?
No, it is changed by group. They also have groups for different groups. They have a group for special education. We just did one for the Miss Neighbors, that group. So they have different groups that they can be members, so they can actually have more quotas than just a teacher one. So if you're a special education teacher and you're printing a lot of IEPs, which are usually large print jobs, they have a group that they charge to that gives them more copies.
Yeah, they've always had limitless copies.
Madam Chairman, we're running late for a close.
Right, we need to move along.
I do appreciate the cost in money. I just want to let you know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Forsman. I think you up next, allocation of school funds.
This one is about school allocations, and again, in the interest of time, I won't read you the stuff here, you've had this since August, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to understand exactly how we look at allocations. Sorry. And see exactly how we configure what the school gets in August and what they get in January. The allocation process begins with the budget process and what the board approves as the line item for allocations for schools. We take that budget number in August, early August, and we multiply it by 80%. And then we take that total and divide it by the total number of students enrolled as of the June report, because that's the last data we have. And so then we calculate a per student cost, and then it goes by school, by the number of students at that school. Then again in January, we look at it, we take the final 20% and we do the same process, and that goes out to the schools in January. So what we've got here on about the third slide in is, you can see here that the allocation for 80% in 18-19 in August was about $27.56 per student. And you can see the elementary schools here and what they received. And then on the next slide, you'll see the middle schools, high schools, what they received, and a total. This information appears individually on your payment of bills and payroll report, especially if you look this month, because it's for August. You can see each school and the check they received, and it says on their school allocation. So you are seeing what's going to each school on the payment of bills and payroll each August and each January. So when we do it in January, you can see here, here is all of last year. You have August, January, and then the professional development that we also allocate out to schools. And you can see here the totals for those, for elementary, and then again for middle and high. And the total last year allocated out to schools and centers was $598,649. Currently, our allocation process has been sent to the schools with the idea that the principal, the philosophy of the school principal is the instructional leader, and that they understand the needs for their school. And so the finance department, the instructional department, we've not given them directives on how to allocate that money out to departments or grade levels. We've simply asked them this year, specifically when they receive their money in August, to put it into an account marked school allocation as a single number, receipt it to that account before they make their transfers. So it's very clear to the reader of those statements what came in and then what was allocated out to the different programs and departments. If this is not something you want us to do, then we need some direction as to what you'd like us to do, or if you want us to review it. We are in process of reviewing it anyway for some guidelines for principals. We have a meeting, principals meeting October 21st, and the meeting is surrounding allocations and what they're doing. They'll be looking at their data in their system, and we'll be talking about what they did and how they did it and why they did it, and trying to come up with some parameters, just some loose parameters for them, to give them some guidelines around the allocations and what they should do. But that'll be October 21st.
Did you say September, October?
October.
Thank you.
21st.
Thank you, Ms. Forsman. We have
I said I
time. I think we need to move to the last item we have here, bring your own device policy update. And Dr. Harrison, you said you had something you wanted to say about this.
Yes, actually, I did have planned for Dr. Rice to present this information, but in the interest of time, I'd like to recommend that we just have it for the board to review. One of the things we were going to recommend anyway was that we share this information with the new superintendent so that we would give him or her the opportunity to review the input from stakeholders and make a decision on how we'd move forward and make that come back to the board after we've had that opportunity. But we do have all the information in your binders, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have, but just in the interest of time, that would be my recommendation, that we postpone the presentation of the information.
Thank you.
Biggest presentation I've ever had.
You did a great job.
We need a motion, I believe, to go into closed meeting. Mr.
Motion
Wallace?
is needed to go into a closed meeting to discuss the following items and subjects pursuant to Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended. Number one, the discussion and/or consideration of the personnel report regarding prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific employees of the school board, and more specifically, as it relates to the following. A, resignations of specific instructional and non-instructional employees of Suffolk Public Schools. B, disciplinary action of a specific teacher employed by Suffolk Public Schools. C, the hiring of specific instructional personnel. D, the hiring of specific non-instructional personnel. E, the hiring of specific part-time employees. F, the hiring of specific substitute employees. G, the hiring of and salary stipends for specific bus driver trainees. H, recommendation for the granting of a salary adjustment for a specific speech-language pathologist. I, recommendation for the granting of a salary stipend for specific individuals participating in the Excellence in Co-Teaching Grant. J, recommendation for specific individuals to receive a Gear Up salary stipend. K, recommendation to hire specific individuals as Title I literacy coaches for Elephants Fork Elementary School and Mac Ben Junior Elementary School. L, recommendation for specific individuals to receive salary adjustments for providing services on Title I summer committees. M, recommendation for a specific individual to receive a salary stipend for qualifying for a certification in backflow preventer repair and installation. N, recommendation for specific teachers to work the 2019 IB Summer Academy and receive a salary stipend. O, recommendation for a specific individual to receive a salary stipend for painting a mural as part of Kings Fork Middle School Title IV grant. P, recommendation to employ a substitute office assistant at Northern Shores Elementary School until October 1st, 2019. Q, recommendation for a specific individual to perform duties of a part-time clerk for the 2019-2020 school year at Hill Point Elementary School. R, recommendation for a specific individual to perform additional hours in the front office at Colonel Fred Cherry Middle School until the bookkeeper position is filled. S, recommendation for specific individuals to serve on Mac Ben Junior Elementary School's PBIS team for school improvement and to be compensated under school improvement grant. A T, recommendation for specific high school coaches to receive extra duty salary supplements for the 2019-2020 school year. U, recommendation for approval of a special education teacher to serve as a homebound teacher. V, recommendation for approval of specific individuals to serve as substitute bus drivers and substitute bus driver trainees. W, recommendation for approval of a specific individual as a bus driver trainee. X, recommendation to provide salary stipends for specific individuals for streaming into Excellence Summer Camp facilitators. 2, the discussion and/or consideration of the pupil personnel report relative to out-of-zone requests regarding specific students enrolled in Suffolk Public Schools and student disciplinary matters where the discussion in open meeting would involve the disclosure of information contained in the student's scholastic record. And 3, the discussion of information subject to exclusion in subdivision 14 of 2.2-37052, where the discussion in an open meeting would jeopardize personal safety or the security of a facility, building or structure, and more specifically, mobile units at Turlington Woods School, all of which is authorized by Section 2.237A1, 2, and 19 of the Code of Virginia 1950 as amended.
So move.
Second.
If board members will please vote. Motion carried.
We will convene again at 7 o'clock.